Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome for her icebreaker speech, someone whose childhood could best be described as frequent flyer in training, Maria Garton. Maria's childhood was basically a world tour, complete with confusion of never quite knowing how to answer the question, so, where are you from? One of her most unforgettable stops was Costa Rica, where she spent her middle school years. This morning, she's here to share cultural plot twists and the lessons she picked up along the way. Please join me in welcoming Maria Garton with her speech entitled, Texan by Birth, Tica in Childhood, a story of many homes. Maria.
We're moving to Costa Rica in 3 weeks. This is what I came home to after a long and arduous day of 5th grade at my elementary school in St. Louis, Missouri. My dad had gotten a job with the U.S. Agency for International Development, and his first assignment was San Jose, Costa Rica. Now you might be thinking, Costa Rica, that sounds awesome. I can assure you that that was not my reaction. At the time, I knew almost nothing about Costa Rica, but I did know it was a foreign country, and I knew that we had just moved to St. Louis a year before, and it had taken me almost that whole year to make friends and really feel like I belonged. Growing up, moving frequently was an integral part of our lives. My family moved pretty much every 2 to 3 years. I was born in Fort Worth, Texas. At 6 months, we moved to Victoria, Texas, where my brother was born. Then we moved to San Antonio. Then we moved to Grand Prairie. Then to St. Louis, where the story begins. I hated moving. The worst part was that first day of school when you didn't know anyone and you had to eat your lunch all by yourself. And you sat there and looked at the clock and watched the minutes tick by, and you wished you could just melt into your chair so that no one could see how miserable and lonely you were. Unlike John, I guess. My dream growing up was to live in the same house my whole life and to have the same best friend from preschool. But that was not my fate. Costa Rica was not as bad as my dramatic 10-year-old self thought it would be, but there was definitely some things to get used to. One of the things I first noticed, and remember I was 10, was that I didn't have my favorite snacks. Back then there were no Cheetos, there were no Oreos, there were mango pastries and things like that that I did not value at the time. The Tico, so Costa Ricans are called Tico for short. The Tican kids interacted differently than what I was used to. They didn't talk the same, they didn't dress the same, and I didn't quite fit in. One area where I thought I actually would have a leg up was Spanish, because I grew up speaking Spanish at home. My mom is from Spain. However, I had no idea that Spanish is not the same in every country. So when I started throwing my Z's and my C's and saying things like coche instead of carro, I got a lot of strange looks and didn't go over so well. I also didn't really understand why everybody kept saying pura vida. If you don't know Spanish, that means pure life. And Costa Ricans say it for everything, like hello, goodbye, thank you, chill out. It's just what they say. So all of this was pretty shocking. But I did find that something fascinating happened, almost without me noticing. I started to get used to things, and I started to appreciate things. I found there were foods that I loved, like gallo pinto, which is rice and beans. I learned how to get along with the ticos, and they even started inviting me to parties and things. I did learn that if you're invited to a party and told to show up at 6 p.m., you show up at 8, because that's when everyone else is going to come, and that's called tico time. I also learned that there are things that I liked a lot about Costa Rica. Amazing mountains, beautiful beaches, but most importantly, the warm and loving spirit of many Costa Ricans and how they welcome you into their heart. And I made a lot of great friends. After 5 years in Costa Rica, we moved to Reston, Virginia, where my dad was reassigned to Washington, D.C. That's where I finished high school, at a big public high school, and that was a very different experience. I then ended up moving to Charlottesville, Virginia for college, New York for law school, then D.C. for a job, then Abu Dhabi, which is a whole nother speech, and then back to Fort Worth, where I was born, and then finally here to Winter Park. I learned some crucial lessons in all of these moves that I will take with me and that I try to teach my kids. The first is there's no perfect place to live. Every place is what you make of it, and there's pros and cons to everywhere, but it's really what you make of it. Second is you have to know who you are, but it's also incredibly helpful to be adaptable, to be able to walk into a room and read the room and understand how you might need to shift your behavior. Finally, I learned that that first day of lunch, eating by yourself, is actually not that bad. It's actually a golden opportunity to meet new people that you might never meet and to learn things that you might never have learned. And I guarantee that you will grow as a person. Now I no longer wish that I grew up in the same house and had the same best friend since preschool. I value the lessons that I learned by being a frequent flyer in training. Thank you, and pura vida.